I'll recap for just a second. We're really pleased to have Joseph join us here with Code for Albuquerque tonight to talk a little bit about some of his experiences in building products as a developer, also as an entrepreneur and a product manager. So thanks, Joseph. Thanks for joining us, and we'll hit the more information about Code for America and Code for Albuquerque a little bit later. Thank you.
Okay, great. Can you all see my screen? Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, great. So today I'm going to be talking about using lean startup and no-code tools to test your hypothesis. So just a little bit about me. I'm a New Mexican. I'm born and raised in New Mexico, from Demi, New Mexico. Went to school in Las Cruces at NMSU. I was interested in coding there. Kind of landed in marketing because I just wanted to build products. I didn't want to get a minor in mathematics to learn how to code. I just wanted to build products. So I kind of landed in social media because that's when a lot of like Facebook and Twitter really started coming out. Around that time, I actually helped my family launch an e-commerce business. So in Deming, they're farmers and they grow green chili, red chili, produce, and they were just selling from their own market. But I helped them kind of build these large communities on Facebook and Twitter. I built them an e-commerce website, and we started selling chili all across the country. So that was like a really good experience as like honing my skills in marketing, coding, being an entrepreneur while I was in college. After I graduated with a marketing degree, I went out to Austin, Texas, worked at an agency for a while, ended up going and starting my own agency where we did WordPress development for small businesses. So our goal really was just help small businesses get more customers. So that was like social media, search engine optimization, and we needed a place to drive all this traffic. So we built them WordPress websites. So I ran that in Austin for about 4 or 5 years. While I was doing that, I started my first startup called Wusk. And this was like my first foray really into being a founder, kind of a tech entrepreneur. Is we built this product called Wusk, where the idea was you could help support creators online. So if these were YouTube creators, SoundCloud creators, all different sorts of creators, you can actually donate to these creators. So we gave creators a tool where they can build a landing page without writing any code. So this is kind of like already going into like no code space. We didn't even really know about it. It's like, as a, say, a YouTuber, you can sign up, you can fill out this information in your bio, you can generate a dedicated website landing page for yourself with your own URL. You can share this across the internet without even writing any code. You can accept donations like via your fans' credit card. And then there was this whole messaging aspect of it. So that was a really good experience because that was like my first product that I had the opportunity to build along with a co-founder, a technical co-founder. Later, I went to a company called SmartLoop, where I was actually a founder as well. Again, this was a no-code tool. We didn't even really think about it in that aspect. It was, we started helping people build chatbots. And initially when we did this, we just built some tools so that it was a little bit easier for developers to write code and deploy this online. But as we went through the process, we were actually building chatbots for companies like Coca-Cola and like National Geographic. But we started realizing that, like, hey, we can write code to build these chatbots, but it was taking us a lot of time to write the code, to make changes, to QA it, to make sure it was working right. So we eventually started building tools to help us stop writing code. So again, we had built this no-code tool to help us quickly build chatbots. While I was there, I mean, like I said, we built chatbots for Coca-Cola, National Geographic. I actually did, the bot's still running. We built a chatbot with the Bernalillo County Assessor's Office. So constituents can come to the website, they can ask questions, and the chatbot will answer these questions instead of actually talking to someone in customer service at the assessor's office. Another product that I built, and this is where we'll kind of focus on the no-code side, is I recently, around I think the Christmas holiday, I had some free time and I built this app called Mountain Bike Club. And essentially it's like an Instagram or a Facebook group for mountain bikers. And you can sign up, you can post photos, you can have conversations with other people that ride in your state. So I'll focus more on this later as we go through the presentation, but this was like another example of using a no-code tool. I didn't write any code here to launch a iOS and Android app. I have been a part of 2 accelerators. So I went to an accelerator in San Francisco called Founder Space, and I had the opportunity to be a part of the Albuquerque ID incubator here in Albuquerque. And that was a really good program because it focused primarily on lean startup. So that what really kind of shifted my mindset from just not talking to customers, spending lots of time and money to build products, to actually kind of restructuring and focusing on lean startup. So we'll touch more on that. Currently at my full-time job, so mountain bike club, that's like a side project that I do at nights and on weekends when I have time, which I really don't right now. But right now I'm a full-time product manager at a company called justanswer.com. And my role there is to help optimize the amount of users that sign up for our product. So it's in the funnel optimization group. I lead a team of developers and designers. So we conceptualize new features or optimizations that we build inside of our kind of sales funnel. And we really focus on lean startup and like data-driven decisions to build features there, as lean as we can. And again, in my free time, I'm a mountain biker. That's pretty much all I do now. So if I'm not kind of working at work or on a side project, I'm usually riding my mountain bike. So let's talk about like what a startup is. And I'll touch on some of this lean startup just kind of quickly, and then we'll get into kind of the meat of like the no code concept. So a startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So a lot of times when we think about startup, the core thing is that though we might think we know what we're going to build and what customers want, in reality, we usually don't. So this is kind of where like extreme uncertainty falls in, where if you're in a startup, you really need to be lean and talk to customers to fully understand what people want so that you be sure that you build that. Okay. So just quickly, lean startup. So lean startup is a system of developing a business or product in the most efficient way possible to reduce the risk of failure. So most efficient way possible, really meaning just building enough that you can test your idea, your hypothesis. And if you fail, it's okay, but you can fail knowing that you did it in the quickest way possible without using the most resources. It's an approach of launching a business and products that treats all products and businesses ideas as assumptions or hypotheses that must be validated by rapid experimentation in the marketplace. This approach relies on scientific experimentation, product releases, and customer feedback to generate validated learning. So again, it's just, we really don't know. We have a certain idea, assumption, hypothesis, and we just need to build it in the leanest ways to really prove that our idea or hypothesis is correct. And then at that point, you can really start drill down and focus down on this idea. But first, the key thing is just validating. So 5 ways not to be lean. And I don't want to be like, I think sometimes I might sound preachy, and I know sometimes people are very preachy about this, but I think it's very important for people to realize these things, because I've seen a lot of people, and I've done it myself, seen a lot of people that are not lean, and ultimately it doesn't work out. And I can talk from experience because I've had a company that same lessons learned here. So 5 ways not to be lean. I have an idea for a product or feature, and I never talk to customers to understand if this is really a problem or if they actually need this. I can spend hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to build a product or feature and never really launch it to anybody. So I've seen this firsthand. I've done this firsthand, spent months, year, thousands of dollars. I know people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to build things, and they never talk to a customer. They never show it to a customer. So they just build in a vacuum. And then they launch their product or feature and learn that nobody wants it. So you see that you waste a lot of time and money. You launch a product, nobody wants it. Maybe you don't market your product. So a lot of times we think like, well, I'm going to launch this. I think it's a saying, I forgot the baseball movie, but it's like build it and they will come. And essentially this is like and I learned this actually as well the hard way, that even though you build a product and you launch it on Twitter and you say, hey, we launched this product, whatever, you really have to market it. So that means like Facebook ads, Google ads, writing blog posts. I'll go into that more, but you really have to market your product. And you continue to not talk to customers or listen to their feedback. And I've done this specifically where I built a product, I launched it, I would talk to customers to get them to sign up, and they would tell me, well, I don't want this. I don't want to do it in this way. I wouldn't ask for donations in this way. I don't want to support my business in this way. But in not being lean, I've seen people, and I've done it myself, where you just dig in and you say, well, these people don't know what they're talking about. They don't actually fully realize what I've built, when in reality, you're probably did not build something that they want or is going to be useful in the future. So again, it's okay if you've done this. I've done this and I've learned the hard way. And hopefully we don't repeat those problems. Okay, so how to be lean. So this is kind of like the learn, build, measure cycle. So first you create a hypothesis, you have assumptions, you create a minimum viable product, you launch it, you measure, and you learn. You just keep repeating this process over and over. It looks different at certain different size companies, like a startup versus like a Series A or a public company, but essentially this is the process that most people follow in lean startup. At like my current day job right now, the circle is a lot bigger because there's more stakeholders, there's a lot of other things, but essentially it's the same thing. Okay, so forming a hypothesis. Lean always starts with a hypothesis. Your ideas can come from quantitative analysis. So like if you already have a product or you already have some type of analytics at, say, your job or your company, I imagine government has a lot of data. So you can look at the data and see if there's any ideas that come from this. You can have qualitative feedback. So this could be specifically people telling you like, I have this problem, I would like to fix it, or just talking. If you're going through the process, sometimes you could be talking to customers to kind of come up with an idea that you want to start. So you can have qualitative feedback. You can do brainstorming sessions there at your company, just yourself. Sometimes just sit down and on your notebook and just start writing ideas. You can see bugs. So I think, for example, like in government, it wasn't so much a bug, but the assessor's office came to us and said, well, we have this process where if people come to our website, they have a question, they actually have to call us, or they have to come in, or they have to email us. And it's kind of a long process for them to find simple information. How can we fix this? So then that was kind of our cue to say, well, we can build a chatbot so they can instantly get that question answered and then just move on along the way, or direct them to the correct information on the website. And then you can get ideas from friends, family, coworkers, or even yourself. So the assumption part, what must happen to prove your hypothesis? So my idea is it's always good to have a very clear statement. And maybe if it's just you're at a startup, it's a little bit more like loose. So I know at our company right now, at Just Answer, we say like our idea is validated if we improve conversion rate by 5%, right? It's a very solid kind of data-driven example. So when we do our products and we run our tests, it's very clear. If we don't meet this, it's not validated. If for smaller startups or just products that you're launching, probably don't have that luxury of having this data. So you can just kind of have more of an engagement stat, or just something that you could kind of point at and prove like, hey, this is working. But I really suggest that you hold to these kind of both a hypothesis and the assumption, because that's going to be a very clear way for you to know, like, is this working? Is it not working? Do I continue, or do I try something different? So the minimum viable product. So a version of the product with just enough features to be usable by early customers who can then provide feedback for future product development. A focus on releasing an MVP means that developers potentially avoid lengthy and unnecessary work. So that's key. It's like, how do we do, and maybe this is like, this kind of resonates really well with me, because I feel like when I was in high school, I was kind of a slacker. Like I would just do enough to get by. So think of it in that way, like just do enough to get by, to get your learning to validate your idea. Don't go overboard spending hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars on something that would eventually could be wasteful. So this is a very good example, and I love this imagery here. So this is an example of to create a mode of transportation for a customer to go from point A to point B. So if you see this top example, this is the wrong examples. Okay, so I want to create a form of transportation. I'm going to build a car. So let's break this down into years. Well, year one, I'm just going to figure out how to make tires. Year two, I'm going to figure out how to make like a chassis. Year three, I'm going to make like a convertible. Year four, I'm finally going to get there. So after 4 years, year 1 through 3, it's not working. It's a waste. Customers aren't happy. And eventually 4 years later, I get there, right? But if I'm making a mode of transportation, in year 1, I can build a skateboard. It works. It's not the optimal solution, but it could work for customers and start steering you in that right direction. Year 2, it's a scooter. Year 3, it's a bike. Year 4, motorcycle. And year 5, I get to a Ferrari. But as you can see, like right off the bat, year 1, I'm already meeting my intended goal with the least amount of work. Maybe it's not the best. It's not a shiny Ferrari, but it works, and it can help guide you into the right direction, get you customer feedback, and ultimately create success. So I think that's always a good thing to remember is I'm not trying to build a full car. I'm just trying to meet the minimum requirement, which is a form of transportation. So think of that like if you're building, well, for example, like we'll go back to this chatbots that we built for Bernalillo County. We had this grand idea. We wanted to build this huge chatbot. We wanted to have all these features. We wanted this thing to do all these things. But initially we said, okay, well, we know that we want to help automate customer service in the assessor's office. Let's look at your highest volume of inquiries, website traffic, and customer service calls. And let's identify, okay, what are the highest things that people are asking for? Maybe it was 4 or 5 questions. And we were able to build that within like a month and a half, and then launch that, and ultimately start proving that we can automate customer service through the assessor's office by clearly defining like the 4 main categories that we were going to address, instead of saying, hey, well, it's going to be a year and a half. We're going to build this whole chatbot that can do all these things, and hopefully it's going to work, right? So that was like a good learning that we helped the assessor's office kind of launch this chatbot quickly. Okay, so let's start going into MVPs and what no code you can do. So with no code, you can build websites, you can build e-commerce stores, you can build web services, you can build apps. So websites, I've seen it. I've joined companies that have done it where I want to build a website. I want to maybe sign customers up. I want to do pre-orders of a product, or maybe government is like, I just want to get some information online and I want people to be able to access it for maybe events or just like civil processes, right? You could probably go to Amazon Web Services, spin up some servers, write a bunch of code, figure out like how to render that online. You can do all the design for CSS. You can spend a year building a website, right? Or you can say, okay, well, I'm going to get it out a Word document. I'm going to write out the content I want. I'm going to sign up for a company like Webflow or Card or MailChimp or WordPress or Squarespace or Wix, and really just upload the content that I've already written, right? The writing of the content isn't that hard. The creating of a website, showing stuff online is luckily not hard anymore. So that shouldn't be a barrier to getting information out to people. one thing that I always kind of ground myself in, and I was doing this back in the day when I used to build websites for businesses, instead of doing something from scratch, always look for a template. So for example, say I'm going to build a website for government office or new division in the government. There's probably already a template that they've created. So just ground yourself in that. But if you go to these services like Webflow or Card or WordPress or Squarespace or Wix, they already have templates. Try to think of what you want your website to look like. Find a template that gets you about 60, 70, 80% there, maybe 100%. Use that template, then make the small changes that you need to, versus saying like, okay, well, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to build out all this design. I want to tweak all this stuff. I'm going to spend, because it's fun. I think I agree. It's fun to like do these things and set up websites and do the design and stuff like that. But ultimately you can waste or spend a lot of time doing the fun things when it's just pretty easy just to say, okay, I'm going to come to Squarespace. This template is good enough. Set it up, upload my content, and then make changes. So e-commerce stores. When I launched the e-commerce store for my family, it was 2007, 2008. There wasn't really no code tools. It was like you had to use WordPress or use some other Joomla and hack some stuff together with PayPal and do all these things. Nowadays, you have stores, you have services like Shopify, BigCommerce, even Squarespace, Wix, and WordPress with WooCommerce plugin. So you can sell digital products, you can sell physical products, you can even drop ship products. So for example, say that we wanted to sell t-shirts for an upcoming event, or we wanted to sell like I Love Albuquerque shirts. And then we don't know that people really want to buy them. I'm sure people would. And I wanted just to test it really quick. I could spin up a Shopify store. I can go to their plugins, and I think I forgot what the plugin, but essentially there's like these drop ship clothing companies. And I can say, okay, this is my image. When somebody buys this, they receive it, they print it, and they ship it to your person automatically for you. So you don't have to worry about buying shirts, printing the shirts, packaging the shirts yourself, shipping them out yourself. Somebody else can do it for you real quick. So that's like an example of being lean if you wanted to sell t-shirts or mugs or something like that. Eventually, I know like we want to support local, and after you prove this out, then you can actually do that. But if you wanted to be lean about that, you could. The same thing with like selling digital products. So easy just to set up like a Shopify or Squarespace or Wix, start selling digital products right away. Even for like events, right? Like you can use all these event ticketing services just to sell event tickets, even for physical events or online events. So that's very easy. So again, e-commerce, very easy. Don't write any code, just use the existing tools that are out there. So web services and apps. So this is where just recently in the last couple of years, there's been some great tools. Coincidentally, without even knowing, I guess I built 2 of them in that space, but like not building tools where you can actually launch products or services without having to really write much code or any code at all. So you can build web services, so business to business tools. So say, for example, I've seen some people that are building like business to business tools for restaurants where you can upload like your menu. It will automatically like schedule social media posts for you. You can build like physical menus, doing all this without writing any code. So for this gentleman, it's really about him proving out the concept using no code tools. You can build business to consumer services. So just like I built this mountain bike app without writing any code, I was able to just go to a service called Odalo. Again, going back to picking templates, I was able to pick a template based on like Instagram, clone it over and make all the changes. So really kind of ground yourself in searching for tools that can help you. So I'll go a little bit more into that in a bit, but like there's tools like Webflow, which can help you build a website, but then also you can build it in a way so you can actually create a web service. So like, for example, I'm just trying to think of like off the cuff, like government services. So like say someone needed to create a license or some type of permit, you can actually probably build a Webflow website. You can allow someone to upload information. Once they upload the information, then actually Webflow can, with a little bit of coding, you can generate like an output of like a permit or some type of document for them very easily. There's services like Bubble, which allow you to build like web services without even really having to write code. So Webflow and Bubble, you can probably do that where somebody can go online with their desktop and they could say, for example, the gentleman that's building the marketing for restaurants, people can sign up, they can create their own menus, they can create their location, they can schedule their tweets and their Facebook posts. So he's doing that all in Bubble. I use Adalo to create my mountain biking app. So there I was able to go into their service and really define the flows that I wanted. So like a user could sign up, a user can post a photo, other users can comment and like on a photo. You have your own profile, so just like Facebook and Instagram. And I did all this without having to write any code at all. And this is beneficial for me because I'm not really a developer and I don't want to pay somebody to kind of help me build my ideas. So this really helped me do this within like 40 to 50 hours. And I'll go more into it here in a second. And there's other services like Airtable, which gives you a way to like list out all your information like in a spreadsheet per se, and then generate like landing pages or websites from it, or allow people to actually upload information into your database. There's also apps like Glide Apps. So I think Glide Apps is kind of interesting and can relate to like government, because essentially Glide Apps lets you have a Google Doc, which could serve as your database. So you can update this with say like event information, or say like we do Art Walk, right? So maybe you can go into Glide Apps, you can have a Google spreadsheet, you can say, okay, I'm gonna list out all the locations for Art Walk and their address and descriptions and all their event information in a Google spreadsheet. And then all I could do is come to Glide Apps, connect that, and I could basically build an app for that. You could probably do it in like 4 or 5 hours. You could build a full app for this where people can actually view it online, or they can actually download this from the app stores. So that's really useful. And then there's other services like Parabola, Integromat, and Zapier, which kind of they allow you to connect all these services together. So for example, like in Bubble or Adalo, you can say like, you can automate different types of actions. Like, for example, like I have some Zapiers that when a user signs up, it will send them a welcome email, or you can schedule like push notifications in there. Or for example, if I give somebody an option to fill out a form in my Adalo app, then I can take that information and I can maybe push that to another service like MailChimp, or it really helps you connect a bunch of different services together really easily through this API functionality. So those are just like a general overview of how you can use, I mean, I haven't gone really into depth like how you can use these specific tools, because I don't think it's that beneficial for me to like take a lot of time showing you these tools, because each tool can have a specific use based on what you're trying to build. So maybe we could stop right here and see, do you guys have any questions on kind of just Lean Startup in general, or just on MVP? So building websites with MVP, with no code, e-commerce, web service, or apps.
And just to help maybe kick that off, I've got a couple questions. I'm just curious about your answer. So one of them, and they're not necessarily the same question, but I'll ask them both. And you can pick and choose. So one of them is, what kind of approach do you use or have you seen used about what product to consider for building something with no code? Is that you kind of poke around in different, chat areas where, different places to kind of get a sense of, it looks like these are two candidates, and then you test those out, or so I'll just go with that question. Is there a process that you use, or is that kind of depend on the situation?
Yes, I guess there's two parts to that. So I guess it's the same answer. So when I built the mountain bike app, I really listed out, okay, these are the types of features and functionality that I needed. So it needed to be a mobile app. It needed to have functionality to post or to be able to go live on the iOS store and the Android store with very minimal effort. And then it needed to give me the functionality of, there's a bunch of different app building services, but being that I was trying to do this in the leanest way, I really wanted a tool that kind of met all of those features off the bat. So like, it was easy for someone to sign up. It was easy for someone, it let me post a photo automatically. So I kind of like started at the high level and said, okay, what are my high level requirements? Had to be an app builder, had to go to iOS and Android. And then from there, then I started evaluating products and saying, okay, this one, again, back to the template stuff, is like, okay, this one already had some templates that I could kind of tweak and get there. This one didn't. Glide apps, for example, I could only like really do something with a spreadsheet and post it and kind of list out these events or something similar. So that was kind of like my guiding decision there for the mountain bike app. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the way I see it, is like how high level requirements to kind of filter down your list, and then looking at the functionality and even the templates, depending on what you're doing, which one can help me get my MVP launched and test it faster.
So, and I'll follow up with more of a comment than a question, I guess, which is that what I've seen from folks in the no code world is what you just described. So you're creating this kind of a requirements document, and then you're looking at all the different pieces and how they need to work together in order to fulfill that.
Yep.
The way that I've seen people say is, that is kind of the work of a developer. It's not necessarily programming, but there is that kind of, there's a level of development work that needs to happen there that does require kind of a developer mindset, even if you're not, writing all the lines of code. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's exactly what my job is now, is just write documents that say, okay, this is our goal. What is our hypothesis? This is our goal. This is what it looks like. And then from there, we kind of, that's like our guiding document, product requirement document, just like you said.
TJ, Elmer, any thoughts, questions that you're interested in hearing?
I'm okay.
Okay. So I could go a little bit more into how I built my current mountain bike app using no code tools. And I think maybe that will spur some ideas. And then at the end, if there's really no like dedicated questions, then maybe we can just like brainstorm and throw it out there, and then we can like talk about like, okay, how would we go about the process? So let's see. Okay. So how did I launch an MVP in 50 to 60 hours? So that's like 50 to 60 working hours. And again, just like Eric mentioned, I wrote a product requirement document. So in this document, I stated my hypothesis. For example, will mountain bikers in New Mexico use an app to post photos and talk with other mountain bikers? My assumption, goal of the test, could I get 100 people within the first year in New Mexico or Colorado to start using this app? List out the minimum needed to test. So this is where I wrote out my user stories, and user stories are just product requirement, like a story. So like as a user, I can sign up so that I can use the app. As a user, I can post a photo so that I can share this with other people in the community. As a user, I can see a photo in a feed and I can like and comment on someone else's post. So being very clear about these requirements and listing out these stories actually helps you envision what needs to be built. And as you go through that, then you can actually like kind of size the effort which is needed to build this, or it kind of helps you, like, for example, for me, I wrote out these user stories, the minimum needed to run this test. And then from there, I was able to come and say like, okay, in the no code space, there's like Adalo, there's these other services. I can actually find someone to help me write this from scratch. What is the service or way that can help me quickly meet these goals? So that's how I kind of landed on Adalo to build out my app. And then the next thing that I did on this project, and we do this at work too, we kind of estimate, we size the project, we estimate the time frame, and this kind of helps us stay within scope. So we're not going overboard, adding new things. It helps us like make sure that we're launching on time. But for this project, and I think this is a very important thing that I believe everybody should do, but I'm for sure starting to do more and more on my side projects, is like set a time frame and then track your time. So for me, I said, well, I'm going to do this. Initially, it was kind of like 40 hours. Can I do this in 40 hours? I bumped it up to like 50 to 60 just because I had some other things I had to do for Apple to get it approved. But really it was like, okay, I'm going to do this in 60 hours. And I would track my hours as I was building it. So I would start a time tracker. And this really helped me as I got through the process. When I got to the end, let's say when I got to 40 hours, I was like, okay, well, I got 20 hours left. I got to launch this thing. What things can I start crossing out, or what things can I take a little bit less detail on and still get it out? So that really helped me just make sure that I wasn't still working on it. I didn't spend 6 months to launch this, and I was actually able to do it in 60 hours. And if you look online, there's a lot of different like examples of product requirement documents. Essentially, it's just like stating your hypothesis, what do you want to do, listing out the minimum features needed, and then and then one thing that I've added is like setting a time frame and tracking your time. So do you guys have any questions on product requirement documents, or like how I structured this, or in ways that it can help you with your project?
So for this one, this was just a total solo project, or did you have like another person or two that you were talking or working with?
Yeah, so this was just me, and maybe I'm just such a generalist that I can do all this. So that's maybe like a luxury that I have. So inside of this, I would say, okay, these are my user stories. Okay, I need to say, for example, if you need like graphic support, or maybe you do need some developer support in some things, by listing out your user story or your requirements, you can then look back and say, okay, well, I'm going to need a graphic designer for this, or I can actually figure out a way to have someone on Fiverr do this for me, or an outsourced person. So I think, like listing that out is really a way for you to kind of then divide up the work if you need it for other people to help you out.
Cool.
Okay. So the next step is to build and launch within your time frame. So again, just being very clear on, okay, these are my requirements, this is my time frame. I have to do everything I can to get it out on time. I think that's very important. Again, like I know just from my last companies, we weren't very diligent in that. So something that could maybe needed to take 2 weeks took a month and a half. I've seen other companies spend all their time and maybe investment and resources trying to build something which they could have, if they would have stuck to this kind of very structured requirements and time frame, then they would have saved time and money, and they would actually validated or invalidated their hypothesis a lot quicker. So I think in a nutshell, it's just being very structured in, this is what I want to do, this is who's going to do it, how we're going to do it, and this is the time frame. So after you've built your product and launched it, it's time to get customers. So sharing on social media, sharing on LinkedIn, online groups like Facebook and Reddit. There's like, depending on what you're building, you could definitely find a group for that. So especially like it's Facebook, there's tons of groups for local groups, national and international groups. Reddit's the same way, LinkedIn as well. You can do paid ads. So if you have some ad budget, you can run Facebook ads or Instagram ads or Google ads. You can do email lists. If you have an email list, sharing your product with email lists. Some other kind of long tail type stuff is you can do like SEO. You're not going to get results right away, but eventually you will start getting customers from there. So one thing that I think,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one thing that I think a lot of us is, and I know I've done not such a good job at this in the past, is build something, you just think that people are going to come to it, but you really need to put in the time that needs to be in your plan to like actually market that to people. What was your question, Eric?
I'll say, you know, in the sort of the crowdfunding arena, that's where it really came home to me, was that I started reading different best practices and stuff like that. And one of the things that became clear fairly early on is you need to start building the audience that you're going to use to leverage. You're going to leverage that audience well before you kind of build that campaign and shoot the video and all this other stuff. As soon as you know you want to do this kind of approach, you need to start building that. I was curious, I mean, I know every different, you know, set of users or market is different. What did you find? Is there a platform that surprised you in terms of getting users, getting folks to visit and use your site?
I think if you have some budget, I think Google Ads are your best bet, just because you can catch people based on their intent. So like, for example, at SmartLoop, we run Google Ads for people that were looking for chatbot builders. At our current company, we do ads at people specifically looking to talk to a specific type of expert or to get a specific type of answer. If you're kind of doing local government stuff, more local, Facebook is probably better. So you can target people in specific zip codes based on certain criteria, like maybe males who are interested in, I don't know, community building or civil outreach. I mean, there's a lot of different like profiles that you can do. So if you have a specific, like if you're looking for a specific person in a specific area, probably social media like Facebook, Instagram are really good for that. If you have like a broader audience of people that are looking for a specific thing, like going online saying like, I want an app for mountain biking. Okay, that's a little bit harder to like target somebody specifically for that, but people are searching for these things. So that's where like the difference between Facebook ads and Google ads really shine. Yep, so that's an important thing. Don't forget to market your product. And then kind of when you get around the kind of development cycle, the biggest thing is learn. So did you meet your assumptions and validate or invalidate your hypothesis? So again, like at my current job at Just Answer, we are very data driven. We're tracking everything. We have the luxury of, we have millions of customers that we can actually like run a test and then have these like formal like data driven analysis to say like, okay, this worked and you improved customer like activity by 5%. So if you have that luxury, like definitely always ground yourself in the data. If you don't, which most people kind of don't have this luxury, is you can use qualitative analysis. So to say, okay, for example, this app that I have, it's a little loosely structured. So I can say like, okay, I built this app, did 100 people inside of Albuquerque start using this. Of those 100 people, are they at least posting once a week or once a month? So you can kind of just have these kind of looser data rules, and you can judge your analysis based on that. Or you can also like talk to your customers. I mean, again, that's like the best thing is talking to your customers and saying like, okay, do you like this app? Do you use it? Why do you use it? What would you like to see different? I think that's a really good qualitative analysis. And then gut check, especially in early days of building a product or a feature. You don't have the luxury of big data sets. So if you kind of see the trend that people are using it, it's resonating with customers. If you have paying customers, like at SmartLoop, we had paying customers that were paying our bills and we were growing. So that was kind of enough for us to continue building as far as like the gut check analysis. Yep. And then once you kind of do this analysis, then the key point there, and I know sometimes, especially when building like startups, you kind of fall in love with the idea, you fall in love with the concept, but this is like the point to really say pivot or preserve. Did you validate or your hypothesis? Did you learn something that will help you kind of pivot into something new or make a change? Or did you invalidate your hypothesis? So this is like, if you stay structured and you kind of run your MVP, you get to this learning phase, you have a solid kind of idea of how you're judging your success or failure. This is like the prime time to say like, hey, if I validate, I continue building, and how do I make it better? Or how do I build a new feature that can just improve on our kind of overarching goal? Did I learn something? So really, like in all of our kind of like my recent projects and at work, we just really like try to understand like, okay, do we validate or invalidate? Yes or no? Do we learn something that can help us maybe further validate, build on the idea? Or do we learn something that say like, your idea was not correct? Do you invalidate your hypothesis? And at that point, you can like stop or pivot into something new. So I think that's key because, I mean, I've kind of, our first company, Wusk, we probably could have stopped it 6 months earlier than we did. But again, we didn't have these kind of like structured decisions in place to tell us like, okay, you're at this point, you need to either pivot to something different based on your learnings, or you need to kind of just shut it down. So I think if you're building something in a new space, I think it's very key to kind of ground yourself in these kind of decisions. And it's okay if you fail, it's okay to shut down a business or an idea or product. Hopefully, like you did just enough work to test it. So if you shut it down, it's not a big deal because you've only spent least amount of work versus spending months, years, thousands of dollars to do something. And then you're so invested emotionally that you don't want to shut it down. You just continue wasting your time. So that's a little advice personally from my end on things that I've done. We're learning to shut down your company or your project whenever the time is right. So that's it. I think if you guys have any questions, we can go back to any specific parts of this. I know we kind of went over a lot. And then maybe if you guys have time, I'm open to it. I kind of like have fun on it. So if you guys have like ideas, then we say like, okay, I want to build this app, or I want to build this service for this department or this civil service. How do we do it? And maybe we can like brainstorm across that. And that would give us some real world examples on how to kind of be lean and use no code tools.
Well, from my world of non-technical.
Thank you. Well, first of all, big thanks for running through all this. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Yes. I'm curious, is Diaz Farms in Deming?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I just looked it up. That's neat. And just for information, several schools are now involved in community gardens, and Rio Grande High School is part of some county land, a 34-acre plat, which is going to involve local farms and a bee garden and the science department and the ag department and some heritage farmers down there. It's kind of interesting. But that aside, you mentioned fundraising. I don't know what in context you talked about, but donations.
Mhm.
And I have a family member that now pretty much supports himself, his music performing and his lecture business with Patreon.
Yep.
Is that a good model? And I'm specifically thinking of a church which is involved in all kinds of community stuff, from community criminal justice to homelessness to caregivers to community schools and immigration. And so they've got people participating that are non-church, other churches, whatever. But there's a need to get some funds, partly for use of meeting space and staff time and whatever. Is Patreon a good model, or is there another model that you know of to let people donate to those specific community activities that church is sponsoring?
Yep. So that's a good question. So I think there's the concept of Patreon is right, but there's probably specific tools for churches. So I would search like Patreon for churches, maybe. Maybe we can do that. Let's see. Can you guys still see my screen? Okay, so let's say like Patreon for churches. What churches?
What
can
we are
learn from
seeing is
Patreon?
you've got the presentation tab is what it's sharing right now. So it's
Okay.
not like sharing the screen, it's sharing the tab.
Okay.
And sort of a background, I don't know, related question is I was curious about WUSC and like whether you were too early or was it the Patreons, or because it just, the creator economy is sort of, I don't know if it was exploding at the time. It feels like it has exploded now. So I wonder if you kick yourself or you'd made the right decision.
Yeah. So yeah, Patreon was like one of our competitors.
That's not too sore of a point.
It's a sore spot, Eric, but I'll talk about it. Yeah, so it was like it's one of our like direct competitors, and it kind of worked out for them because they were probably more lean. They were probably quicker to build products. They talked to customers better. The founders were actually like YouTube creators. So yeah, they were probably a little bit better at startupping than we were. So lesson learned, but yeah.
Is that something you still have your fingers in and are doing?
No, we shut it down. We still have the code, we could spin it up, but no, that company and product got shut down. But yeah, so I think like if you're looking for something similar to Patreon, I would just search for like Patreon for churches or donation products for churches, and I'm sure there's plenty of products. Yeah, so I don't know. I would just do some research and see like if there's a product that's more aligned for what a church is doing. So I'm sure the concept is there, but there's somebody probably built a product specifically for churches or for nonprofits.
Yeah, the broader nonprofit area, because we're partnered like with ABC Community Schools and the Caregivers Coalition and a whole lot of things. And so it would be the broader interest, not paying for a day with Jesus.
Yep. Yeah, so I would just do a little research again, like define what you're looking for, and then go to the internet and start searching to see like, okay, what products are there out there, what products are similar, and then what kind of ultimately meets our needs.
Thanks.
Well, and the thing that I think that I've noticed, especially in talking this evening, is you have a, let's see, it's sort of like a product mindset. And a lot of people, particularly in government, don't have that. And sometimes with churches and other nonprofits, I know I was rarely thinking of a product. I was thinking of, I need to do this thing. But I wasn't thinking of in a replicatable way. I wasn't thinking of how do I build in sustainability to making this something that was going to grow. And I think that there's some of the product mentality that I think are useful to think about when you're thinking, say you're talking about churches and you're trying to think of the Patreon model. Well, what works for the folks who are working in there is it's a regular, it's a cycle of things that are being produced on a regular basis, whether that's music or blog post or some other kind of thing. So the thing that makes that model work is a pipeline. So thinking of the whole product, I think, is a really useful thing when you're going down this road.
Yep, exactly.
It's kind of fun. I'm part of a team that's working on a different church's fundraising. We're not related to fundraising, but you know, I'm doing some communication stuff. It's like, yeah.
Well, the other organization that makes me want to ask about it is Caregivers in Action. The Caregivers Group has been a coalition advocating for and lobbying for caregivers generally, but in a way, what this Caregivers in Action is a pre-union organizing tool in a way. There's a little membership, and what they're really trying to do, and this more broadly, I'm interested in even from the church standpoint and other groups that I'm with, telling their stories. And it sounds like what you've done with the mountain bikers is a place for people to tell stories about their organization or their interests.
So yeah, ours is again specifically for mountain bikers, but I think that's a very key point, is that there's tools maybe that can be used from different niches, but also there's probably a tool for churches or for nonprofits or for unions that somebody has already built, or that a large company actually kind of like has a subset of like features or just like specialty for that. Yeah, so I think definitely like just going to Google and searching like what like your use case, I think that could bring you to solutions to get these done. And again, I think the whole thing with no code or just in general is we're to a point where there's tools that help you build something you need, or we're actually to a place where there's somebody has already built what you're looking for. You just got to find it.
Yeah.
So we're definitely past the days where we need to like hire a team, or even in government, we need to hire an agency. We need to have our internal teams build out all this functionality, all this. It's probably already built. You just have to find it.
And I'm not sure if you've worked with, say, a lot of government clients, so this may or may not be a good question. One of the things that I appreciated is, and in kind of reading and seeing some case studies from around the country, is the government departments that are really taking this kind of lean startup or this lean approach. It seems like they're consistently delivering good value to their citizens, to the members of their communities. Have you seen enough government to kind of see, are folks moving in that way, or is it more of a mixed bag?
I think it's a mixed bag still, because you still have to deal with like fulfillment or like purchasing cycles. You still have to deal with approvals. But I think at the core, like when we worked at the assessor's office, or we actually did some other kind of like government type insurance spots, is just being very lean in your implementation and what you're trying to accomplish. And from there, it will help you at least get your like MVP or your like proof of concept project ready, so that you can actually go through the process, which it takes in government to like get approval, make sure that you meet like the procurement cycle. So that's like kind of a key part of it as well. It's just being very lean in how you're going to start the project and get your first part out, so you can go jump through all those hoops to actually get it started. And then you can actually, once you get it approved, continue to build on it. But it's just kind of being lean and making sure you get through the process first, and then building upon it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So I think I'll say the projects that I've got sort of with government, I'm like, for whatever reason, I'm being like hesitant to share because it's being recorded.
Oh yeah. No,
so, but it's also fun. I I think the path that I'm taking, which is kind of Airtable and a front end and some other stuff, seems like it makes sense.
Yep.
But yeah, I know TJ, if you've got any other questions, but I want to thank you for your time. First, yeah, TJ, any questions, or Elmer, any last questions, and Joseph, if you've got any last thoughts to share. I'm in my ready to pounce mode.
Yeah, so I think just closing, lean, no code, going back to kind of being a slacker is like, just figure out a way to do the least amount of work that gets you by. And then once you kind of figure out like, okay, this works, then you can put more effort and time and resources into it. But for a lot of projects, could be a startup that you're trying to raise millions of dollars to go public. It could be government. Just do the work needed to see if it's going to work, if people are going to find value from it. If they do, then you can continue to put more resources in it. But just kind of ground yourself in saying, like, okay, I need to be lean, I need to be a slacker, whatever, however you want to frame it. I just need to do the least amount of work possible to make sure that this gets out and can provide value to people. If it provides value, and we always emphasize if, like as a programmer, if it provides value, then you can make that decision, like to continue or to just shut it down.
Thanks. And I think oftentimes it's folks kind of in the, I don't know whether it's the developer world or the community. Sometimes, you know, having been in government, but having been outside of government, sometimes it's those voices from outside who usually you're finding an ally, you're finding somebody who wants to go in a direction. And if you can be another voice that says, really, you've got to do this, that's something that they're really, really thankful for.
Yep.
Because you're helping them stick to kind of the philosophy that they'd like to go with, even if it's not always easy within government. So
Yep.
I'm going to throw, let's see, I'm going to throw this thing on. So we're ending with an image. But I want to thank Joseph again. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for your thoughts and your wisdom. I'll share the video with you probably a little bit later this evening and maybe cut it down a little bit. But and thanks. The only other updates that I had, I think TJ and Elmer, you've probably already seen National Day of Civic Hacking is happening in September. There's a couple things that came out of the Data Fest that I think are going to be useful in terms of potential relationships with the city, but there's also that question of what kinds of how receptive the city and other partners might be in approaching this. So there's a lot of talk about, but there's a couple months to do that. So I just want to save everyone's time, but also thanks, Joseph, again for joining us, and hope to see folks next month.